Welcome to Helping Organisations Thrive. Today, I have the great pleasure of Aaron Phipps on the show. Good morning to you, Aaron.
Hey, Julian, how you doing?
Good to see you. And I'm just going to tell the audience a little bit about you. You are a gold medal winning Paralympic champion from Tokyo 2020 Games. You've scaled Kilimanjaro on your hands and knees, and that will come a bit more clearer later on. We start talking about you for charity. And you've been voted in the top 100 most influential people in the UK with a disability. And we're going to be exploring a little bit of how you've overcome adversity and what we can learn from that and the mindset that's created in your own sense. So I want to take us back to when you were 15. This is when it all sort of happens. From what I've read in your story, you were probably, I would say, a healthy 15-year-old doing what 15-year-olds do. So what happened at 15, Aaron?
Yeah, absolutely. It was the first day back to school after the Christmas holidays in 1999. I was in year 11 at school, so all those years of school, and I missed the most important bit on the run up to my exams. But I got home and I told my mum that I didn't feel very well. It was January, loads of flu around, didn't think anything of it. Went up and got into bed, had a fever, but again, didn't think anything of it. Finally got to sleep, woke up, vomited twice in the night, cleaned my teeth, back to bed as you do when you're poorly. My dad woke me up in the morning to see how I was, and I said I felt like rubbish. I got up to go to the toilet and I collapsed on the landing. Dad heard me fall down, so he thought it was something more serious, ran up, scooped me up, put me in my parents' bed, and my mum saw a rash appearing on my chest. And she vaguely knew the symptoms of meningitis, so she kept asking my little sister to bring a glass. She didn't understand, so she kept bringing a glass of water. Mum was saying, no, just a glass. Pressed the glass down on the rash, it didn't disappear. So they called out a doctor who called out an ambulance. So my very first symptoms to life support machine was 12 hours, and from the rash appearing was just 1 hour. And on paper, I had acute respiratory and renal failure from meningococcal septicemia. So I had meningitis type C. So I became very poorly very quickly.
And what was the result of that? I mean, that sounds terrible, and obviously every parent's nightmare in terms of what's happening to your son or your daughter. So what was the result of that? Because obviously they tried to combat that with obviously antibiotics and things like that.
Yeah, indeed. So I'll be honest with you, Julian. I don't think I ever appreciated what my parents went through until I had my own children. You talking about it being a parent's worst nightmare. I mean, you look at it from their perspective, as you mentioned, healthy 15-year-old. Next thing you know, I'm flat on my back in intensive care, and they're saying to my parents, you know, you need to invite your family in to say goodbye if they want to. They gave me a 20% chance of survival, which I think was just being nice to give them some hope. But yeah, I was completely on life support. The only thing that didn't shut down was my heart. If my heart had stopped, that would have been the end. But yeah, they combat it through antibiotics. Meningitis is weird because you catch it, they pump you full of antibiotics and it's gone, but then it's the aftermath that you're left with. So it's a bit more complicated than this, but your body's very clever at keeping you alive. So mine went into shutdown mode. It sent my blood to my vital organs. I didn't get enough blood to the ends of my legs and the tips of my fingers. So they woke me up in intensive care and broke the news to me at first that I might have to have very tips of my fingers amputated and my toes. And then not long after that, they broke the news to me that it was going to have to my feet as well. So that was really difficult because I was down to about 6.5, 7 stone. I was pretty much on death's door, and then finding out that I'm going to have to become an amputee as well. So that rehabilitation process was massive. It took ages. I was an absolute mess.
And I was at 16 years old. I was in hospital. I had a motorbike accident, so not quite the extent, but I was in hospital 3 months, bedridden. It's the worst nightmare for somebody at 16, 15 years old to be bedridden and pinned down, and I had to rehabilitate. Obviously, I didn't lose my legs, but I certainly had a lot of injuries. How did you deal with that? I mean, whatever age you have that sort of losing your legs from the knee down, that's something to try and deal with in your head. I mean, I don't know, how did you cope with that?
I think this will be something that will come out more in discussion as we work our way through this, but it was strange because it was arguably the worst and best thing that ever happened to me in one foul swoop. Worst for obvious reasons, but best because I wasn't making really bad choices as a teenager, but I wasn't particularly working hard in school. I don't know what route my life would have gone down. And this gave me kind of a focus and a drive. I mean, if you want to kick up the bum, nearly dying will do that for you. And it made me very determined to get better as quick as I could. So the physios would come in and do exercises with me. I demanded double physio sessions. And yes, it was uncomfortable, but I couldn't understand other people that moan about having to go and see the physio. I'm like, these people are trying to help us. Come on, let's get more of this.
But what made you want double? I mean, that's unusual, because I remember my physio. It was the nightmare. Physios are quite hard and tough, and they hurt as well. But what made you think, I want double? What was the drive in that wanted to get better, wanted to do something more?
I just wanted to get better as quick as I could. There was no way that this was going to define me or beat me. I remember there was another girl in hospital, and she was very poorly as well, but she kept shouting out things like, let me die and things. And I remember just thinking, why would anyone want to die? Come on, let's get on with this. And I don't know what it was. It sparked something in my head. But to be honest with you, I thought I was dealing with it okay. But looking back, I probably wasn't. I mean, it took me years and years to get my head around what had happened from the trauma sense and becoming an amputee. But I guess that's how I focused and thought I was okay with it by digging deep and deciding to get better as quick as I can, and just taking, the opportunities and the resources around you to do that.
Because often people, when they go through such difficulty, they can either become, what we say, post-traumatic growth, where they get transformational and they see meaning in it and they do something with it, like you have yourself, or it flips the other way, where they become almost post-traumatic stress disorder, where it almost defines them more in a negative sense. What do you think it was in you that sort of made you flip, and what was your journey from that point that got you to where you are today to be more transformational for you?
That's a massive question. Do you know what? Being honest, I don't know. It just flipped something in my head. I just wasn't going to let it define me, and I just decided that I was going to beat it as quick as I could. It almost sparked a light bulb above my head and made me go, rah, I'm going to beat this. It wasn't a conscious thing. I thought, I'm going to sink or swim. It just happened. And it kind of happened quite organically as well. I don't like saying that word, but it just did. And I decided that is what I was going to do with it. And you know what, if I could box that and sell it, then, that'd be great. And I can't. And that's when I talk to people, I try and use my stories to try and help them. But I had more to give, I was 15, and this wasn't going to be the end. I never finished school. All my friends were preparing to their GCSEs. I was relearning how to walk, how to hold a knife and fork, or to do all that kind of stuff. I made it to my prom. So I was about 6.5, 7 stone, and I was bandaged from the ends of my legs all the way to the end of my stumps in this kind of massive NHS wheelchair. And people would say, Aaron, you look amazing. I didn't look amazing. I did not look amazing at all. But I made it to my prom. But I don't know. It just gave me a perspective, going back to the thing of, I had a few shaky moments in hospital. One time I nearly bled out, and I'm not going to go into details. People eating their breakfast are not going to want to hear this, but I nearly died a couple of times in ICU. And if you want that real perspective, when you're laid there thinking, okay, this is it, it's happening, and then you get another opportunity, you're going to take that opportunity.
So you obviously got this drive. You obviously want to take this opportunity, and I know you went on to do things like 10K sort of wheelchair, sort of for charity and races. You started to just seem to do something with it. I mean, did opportunity just start to appear and challenges, and you thought, actually, I'm going to do something with this. I'm going to raise some money and get fit and start that. What was it behind that?
Right. The good answer would be yes. I always had this goal and this clear focus, but if I'm being brutally honest, it all happened by chance. I went back into job roles. I was working in kind of admin jobs because of my disability. I probably would have been more suited at kind of a hands-on role, but I just couldn't do that. So I went into admin roles, and I wanted to raise some money for the Meningitis Research Foundation that had helped me out when I'd been poorly. And I said that to my friend Nick at work, and he said, you should enter the 10K race. And I went, oh yeah, okay. And this seems to be a theme of what's happened, is I just agree to things I probably shouldn't agree to, and it's led on to other opportunities. But that's literally how it started, because I wanted to raise some money for charity. I did a 10K race in an everyday wheelchair. Started at the front of this race, got overtaken by everybody and came at the back, but loved it. I got a second-hand racing wheelchair, and I did the London Marathon twice. Again, someone said you should enter the London Marathon, and I went, all right, not realizing how far 26 miles actually is. And I did that twice. And the second time I did it quite fast, in 1 hour, 59 minutes. And that's how it all started with the wheelchair rugby. I met a couple of guys who played wheelchair rugby, and that's how I ended up in the Paralympics.
Now, you say it was all by chance and it just happened, and I appreciate that, and it's quite nicely flippantly to say that. But there was something in you that was probably driving you or directing you or allowing you to see those opportunities, wasn't it? Do you think?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I'm probably being a bit flippant. I mean, the truth is, I just kind of agree to things and I did fall into them. But I think there was probably something at the back of my mind saying, hey, you've got more here. I think it was going back to being poorly, just trying to take every opportunity and then seeing where those opportunities led, I guess. And this is one of my messages when I work with people now. I'm like, put yourself out your comfort zone, try something new. Don't sit in your comfortable little bubble, sign up and do something, because that's when life gets interesting, isn't it?
No, it does, and putting yourself outside your comfort zone, it takes a bit of courage, doesn't it? Because you're not entirely sure what the outcome is going to be. You chuck yourself into a 10K race, and sometimes, perhaps at the time, a little bit naivety can really help. Sometimes where you go, I can do that. Let's give it a go. But you were obviously seeking some sense of opportunities, and I think it's sometimes setting our mindset a little bit of let's look for the the good rather than looking for the bad, or looking at what we could have done. Actually, what can I do? It's just little reframes, isn't it, our mindset that helps, I guess, foster and enhance those opportunities that you grab hold of.
I think so. And I think it's not overthinking things as well. I think we have a tendency to go, oh, that's a really good opportunity. And then, imposter syndrome kicks in and a million reasons why you shouldn't do it happens. So just do something absolutely bonkers. I think my story is a good example of how things can go wrong very quickly for no particular reason. And one day, when we're old and grey and, we're thinking and contemplating life and what we've done, you're not probably going to remember the money you earned, but you're going to remember the opportunities you did. You're going to remember the time that you went and did a charity challenge, or, you put yourself out your comfort zone. So this would be my message to people: just don't overthink it. Just sign up and do something. I'm a bit horrible at times. If I'm speaking and someone says, oh, I really, really would like to do this, I'll pull £10 out of my wallet and sponsor them, because as soon as you got sponsored, you can't pull out of something. So that's a really good way. If you want to do something and you want to twist your arm, tell someone you're going to do something and get sponsored, because as soon as you do that, you can't back out. I'll be setting up a GoFundMe page for you. If you said you wanted to do something, I'm like, yeah, let's make this happen right now. Do not pass go. Do not collect £200. Let's just crack on with it. Why not?
So you must have had times where you've put yourself out there and you've just gone for it. And I agree that don't overthink things. Just do it. And things have gone wrong and things have been difficult. And so, how have you dealt with that? Because it's all very well getting out of our comfort zone, and it is uncomfortable. But things always don't happen to be the sort of great outcomes. Sometimes things don't happen, do they? Or they fail, or whatever you want to call it. How have you dealt with those situations? Have you got an example of that in your lead up to getting into sort of the wheelchair rugby?
Well, we're talking about resilience now, aren't we? So for me, resilience is a muscle that you flex. It's like something you can work when you go to the gym. You can go and make your arms stronger. You can make your resilience stronger, because when things go wrong, that's when you learn coping strategies to be resilient, and that's different for every person. And that'll be different for every single scenario as well. I think it's specific to the area you're working in. So you've got lots of resilience now about running a podcast and, delivering these live sessions online. I've never done that before. I haven't got any resilience around that, but that's because you put yourself out there to do something. So I'm going off on a tangent here. So let me think of an example. So I got the opportunity to try, and the next games was going to be London 2012. And I was given this opportunity. They said, if you work your backside off, there's a chance you could get selected. But I had a job at the time. I was working. I started to get some funding, but I was on the lower tiers because I was a brand new athlete. So I was trying to work a full-time job and compete and kind of build up to the game. So yeah, there was times when I thought, I've bitten off more than I can chew here. We had a very young family as well. And I remember laying on the gym floor and crying at times because I was so incredibly broken. But, would I change it? No. We went to London and we came fifth, which, as an elite athlete, you don't want to come fifth. That's awful. You want to get a gold medal or you want to come eighth. Fourth and fifth is bloody terrible, to be honest. But that probably led on to, that's when I learned real strategies around being an athlete, how I manage myself, how I look after myself, like the types of foods I should be eating. Putting yourself out your comfort zone and trying things like this is when you learn to be resilient. And God, no, of course it's not going to go right all the time. But if you don't try, nothing's going to happen.
Mm. And when you said you were crying on the gym floor and stuff, how do you sort of pick yourself up? How do you sort of get out of that sort of hole of feeling sorry for yourself, or things are difficult. So, I mean, and I appreciate you might be telling yourself, like you're telling me now, just get on with it. But what did you do?
No. At that point, you need a support team. So, okay, so volunteer and sign up and do these crazy challenges, but then surround yourself with really good people who can help you when it goes wrong, because you can't be an expert on everything and you can't do everything on your own. So I had people at I train at Southampton Solent University, you know, I had professors of sports science training me, I had nutritionists, I had my family, you know, people who, when it got very, very tough, were there for me and probably give me perspective as well, you know, because it is only just sport. Don't tell my governing body I've just said that, but you know, the reality is, you know, your family and other things are more important, and sometimes you need that perspective too. So yeah, the easiest way to answer that question, you know, when it gets real tough, is have a good support network around you.
And obviously, you said at 2012 you came 5th, which was you might as well be in 15th. It didn't really matter in that sense. I sort of get that. I think 4th is the worst. I think. So, as a team, I mean, obviously, this is then doing as a team, because it's slightly different, you know. Because obviously, I work with teams as well in terms of resilience, and it's very different than individual. So, how do you, you know, think about, okay, we've got 5th. What did you do post sort of 2012 as a team, and how that got you to Tokyo, which then you ultimately got gold? I mean, that's quite a shift, isn't it? I mean, what were the things you did as a team and individual?
Okay, so just for context, I competed in 2012. I took a break because I couldn't keep doing it for a while, and that was right for me. So I didn't compete in Rio, and then I went back for the cycle to try and make it to Tokyo. So that's just for context. But as a squad, you know, we had historically never medaled. We'd always come 4th and 5th in every major competition. We'd always done our best, but we just couldn't break into the medals. And there was just this kind of jump between Europe and then maybe us and then the rest of the world, like the top teams at the time, America, Canada, Australia, these teams that were still putting sort of like, you know, up to 10 points a game on us. So we had to do something. As a squad, one of the big things we worked on, our psychologist worked with us on this, was our identity. So you know, our sport's relatively new. It's only been around since the 70s. And as GB, we were, you know, really only competing properly since kind of the 90s. So it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's quite new. So we needed to come up with an identity and a culture that we all bought into, because we're a bit fragmented. And that was a process it went through under the tribe model. I'm sorry, I can't tell you all the details on this because I was kind of on the program rather than the person delivering the program, but our psych worked with us on this. So the research suggests that, you know, teams with a strong identity perform better than teams without a strong identity. You think it'd be in sport that you'd win and then that creates your identity, but that's not the case. And, you know, we had words that we bought into and kind of phrases and values, like we were a relentless team. We had really good comms. We were trying to leave a legacy for people behind us. And we started to really buy into this. The one that sticks in my mind the most is that we had no zappers. So when you came into a training session, you could be feeling like absolute rubbish. But if someone said to you, how you doing? You go, yeah, I'm all right. Because it's nothing worse, is there? When you go into that high performance environment and you go, how you doing? They go, oh, something's happened. The car broke down, you know, tire blew up or something. You know, so we were always there to kind of big each other up. So every training session we did, you know, they just ramped up and got more and more and more and more intense. But something special happened in that team, because on paper, you know, we were 5th in the world. We'd never won a medal. And in the middle of a global pandemic with no resources, we went and got the gold medal in Tokyo. So that was fairy tale magic stuff.
So tell me a bit more about how you create that identity. I guess you were talking about purpose and vision and the values as that team. What other things did you do to try and, I guess, daily or weekly, whenever you met, embed that sort of culture and identity?
I guess we always had kind of the communication would be flowing all the time. In lockdown, when, you know, we didn't have resources, we were constantly having meetings, looking at ways, constantly watching video analysis of other teams. And it just became natural that we had these WhatsApp group goings where we were always pushing for more. What could you be doing here? Could you just be on top of this player? What do you think on this? These dialogues that are happening more and more and more. And it just kind of became part of our culture. You know, some of my teammates were very isolated. They weren't able to leave their house in lockdown as well. So it was trying to stick with them as well. And we were having, sure everyone had family quizzes. We had teen quizzes and things as well. And it was so many little pieces of the jigsaw that slotted together. A little bit of luck as well that meant we eventually got that medal in Tokyo.
You talked before about, you know, people coming in feeling a bit blur. There was none of that. It was almost let's go for it for high performance. How did you do when people genuinely were feeling, I'm not feeling it today? What was the, you know, was it okay to say, Aaron, I'm not feeling great today? And
yeah. We're not like.
I mean, how did you sort of
get
get
a culture
people?
where you can never do it? No, of course. No, and I think there's
Because obviously
difference.
sometimes high performance can create that mindset where actually I'm in a team, everybody's on it. Well, I think they're on it anyway. That's what they've told me. I can't show any sense of weakness or any sense of vulnerability here because we're all about high performance. Was that in play, or I don't know? I understand
No.
the dynamics.
It's and I think when I'm talking about these things, I'm talking about, you know, more what I refer to as trivial things, like your car broke down. It's not that trivial, is it? But you know what I mean? You know, like normal, you know, I didn't get as much sleep as I'd like to last night versus there's a family emergency and you need to go home. Kind of for us, family and things were always more important than anything else because someone isn't happy, they can't perform anyway. So yeah, if someone's injured with a broken arm, then that's fine. We'll let them off. But we're just talking about more day-to-day, perhaps trivial things. You know, we might go off to a tournament and the food's out of our control and it isn't great. We're doing what we can and we take snacks with us, but I'm not going in and going, oh, this breakfast is rubbish, you know, versus Jamie's got something happening at home and he needs to leave. That's very different.
Yeah, no, excellent. That's good. And so obviously that resulted in you obviously getting your gold. And is it the only gold as a team sport in Paralympics, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, Paralympics GB, first team gold medal. So
This is fantastic.
This is what I mean. I have to pinch myself still when we talk about it. To the years of heartache and thinking to yourself, you know, I might go through my entire career and this may never happen. And the people that were most important to me when we done it, obviously the team, but it was doing it for my family. You know, they follow you around the world and love you unconditionally. And they say, don't worry, daddy, you did your best when it doesn't go right. But to do that for them and to see what happened afterwards, a bit jealous of the parties that happened at my house, to be honest with you, because obviously it was in the middle of COVID. But we're videoing each other and yeah, it was raucous here. So yeah, I was a little bit jealous of that as well. But to do that for them was what made it really special.
Fantastic. I mean, that's a great achievement. I say well done to you and the team there. And we hope for more in Paris 24. And so what's in terms of, I'm going to talk about Mount Kilimanjaro in a moment, but so Paris is next year. And I guess you've got some way to go to get there, isn't it? It's not just a simple, you go automatically, do you?
No, not at all. So we haven't qualified yet. We've got the European Championships, the beginning of May. So that's the next big competition we're building up to. I'll give them a plug if that's okay. Actually, that's at the Principality Stadium in Cardiff. So if anyone wants to come and watch some high-level wheelchair rugby in the UK, then check that out. Just Google wheelchair rugby 2023 European Championships. If you do come, you need to wear Phipps tops, headbands with number 13 on your back. That would be ideal. Thank you. But yeah, that's still going and it never stops really. Because I play for Great Britain, and to get the high level of competition, we're always flying around the world and playing friendlies or going off to tournaments, etc. I was in Denmark last week, so it never really stops. I think the public sometimes think, you know, we all come out for the Paralympics and then disappear again for 3 years, but that's not the case.
No, there's all the training, qualifying, and everything else going on, isn't it, constantly? So, well, let's hope you do qualify. I'm feeling confident based on your previous performance, although it's not all about your previous performance; it's about the now performance. But I'm sure you're doing okay, and we'll qualify for next year, which would be fantastic. So you went on in 2013. You did Mount Kilimanjaro, sort of thing that, you know, if I was in a wheelchair, I would think I'm going to climb, you know, the highest mountain in Africa. I don't think I would think that, to be honest. So why, in the first place, did you go for that, Aaron?
Yeah, again, it was all by chance. So as
I don't think these are all by chance. Some of these things.
No, it's taking opportunities, isn't it? Which isn't
Yeah.
chance, but when these opportunities come up, grasping them and going for it. But it was to do with the work that I did with MRF, the Meningitis Research Foundation. I've raised £250,000 for them over the years. And when Mike from the charity turned up at my house and said, you know, we send lots of university students up Kilimanjaro, do you fancy it? I kind of said, well, yeah, okay. I mean, I had a bit of an idea about Kilimanjaro. I knew it was a mountain, but I didn't know much else. So I had to Google it and look it up. So I've got prosthetic legs, being an amputee. I'm a bilateral below knee amputee, missing both my legs below the knee, but I've got bad scars from the sepsis. So I can walk, but I was never going to be able to walk up Kili. So the idea was I was going to have to do it in a wheelchair. We looked into it. Other people have been up Kili in a chair, but they've been carried to the top. At which point I went, no, I'm not up for that. So the goal that we set, Julian, was to become the first person in the world to get to the top of Kili without any assistance.
So that's literally you pushing yourself in the sort of your wheelchair or adapted wheelchair, I presume, and then I guess at some point scrambling up at the very top.
Well, the information we were getting back was that it was going to be tough, but it was going to be doable. You know, it's not the most technical mountain in the world. It's 5,896 meters tall, but it's pretty much like a really steep, long walk towards the end. It's, you know, you don't have to climb up any ice faces like you would on some of the more technical mountains, which is why lots of people do it for charity. So looking at that, and we had people sending drones up there, etc. There were these man-made paths, and it looked like it was going to be doable. So I got myself a specially adapted wheelchair called a mountain trike, which almost, if you imagine, you drive it like ski poles, and it's geared, and you wheel your way up, right? Okay. And we got there and we set off. We were going to try and do it in the wheelchair. That was the plan, under my own steam. Day one was meant to take between 3 and 4 hours. It didn't. It took 6 hours. Day two was meant to take between 4 and 5 hours. It didn't. It took 10 hours. The next day they said, you're moving too slowly. We're going to have to carry you.
What did you think then? Because that was sort of blowing out the whole doing it on your own, wasn't it, I guess?
Well, because this is live, I can't tell you what I actually said. But for argument's sake, we will say that I said, thank you for your concern, but the only way you're going to carry me on this mountain is if I collapse and you need to take me back down again. and it didn't really go like that. We had a full-blown argument on the side of a mountain because they were saying, we've got to carry you. And I was saying, no, you're not very politely. And we were literally shouting at each other. When you have these moments in life, don't you, when, you know, we're having a full-blown argument and nearly having a punch-up on the side of a mountain in Tanzania. It was daft. It really was silly looking back at it. But I just wasn't going to get carried. That just wasn't in my vocabulary. There was no way I was just going to get carried up this mountain. So
what? Just to stop there for me. What is in your psyche? You got something. Somebody comes to you and says, "Come and climb Mount Kilimanjaro," and you just go, "Yes." You know, without probably any thought about it at all, but that's how it appears. And then you have this psyche of, you know, I'm not going to be carried. What is behind all that? There's something quite deep there, isn't it, in terms of how you sort of seem to get through all the challenges and all the things you've faced.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying it quite flippantly because I would just like more people out there to take more opportunities, you know, and then worry about what you've agreed to after you've agreed to it. But yeah, obviously it took lots of plan, lots of prep, and lots of hard work.
Well, no, I suppose I'm more thinking of your mindset of how you. I appreciate. I like your just do it because I think it's really good, and I think we should do a lot more of that and just think about the consequences later on, in a sense.
Yeah.
But what's behind that? Well, how do you get that mindset to think that way for you?
I'm quite lucky that I think I'm just programmed like it. And when they said, we're going to have to carry you, where my mind went, if I'm being honest, is I just thought about all the people that I'd said that I was going to climb up this mountain for charity. You know, the fact that I'm the least disabled on my wheelchair rugby team in terms of classification, you know, and I just thought there is no way that I can get carried up this mountain. And a bit at the back of my mind, I also knew was that if I did, I was never going to forgive myself. So there was this really lovely moment where we're on the side of the mountain, me and Ian from the charity, and, you know, and bearing in mind, there's so much riding on this, you know, there's so much work has gone into this ascent. There's so much, well, you know, it can't fail because it's going to look like a failure and we're going to lose all the PR from it as well. And that, and I'm saying to Ian, look, I can't get carried, mate. And he's going, I know, mate. And I'm crying and he's crying. I've got to go till I drop. And he said, yeah, I know. I reckon you can do it. Let's do it. And when I think about, you know, how much pressure was on him as well, he could have pulled rank and said, no, I'm sorry. You've got to be carried. We've got to make this happen. You know, and it was those kind of moments. But I guess maybe I would have towards the end if it had all gone wrong, but I had with me a set of B&Q knee pads and a roll of duct tape, technical mountaineering equipment. So I duct taped my knee pads to my legs. I refused any help from the guides, and I just started crawling on my hands and knees.
Crumbs. And how long was that crawl?
4 days. So the first day was 9.5 kilometers up the mountain, and then it was 3 more days after that. So I crawled on my hands and knees for 3 more days to get to the summit. But here's the thing. Okay, so now we're jumping around a little bit here, but I didn't really realize what I'd done. It wasn't until I got home and people said to me, how did it go? And I'd say, well, yeah, they were going to carry me, so I crawled. And they'd say, what? What do you mean you crawled? And I said, well, they were going to carry me and I crawled. How long did you crawl for? 4 days. What? And that's when I had the penny dropping moment of what I'd actually achieved. But at the time, it just didn't compute in my head. You're not carrying me. No way. I'm going to do this.
I didn't realize it was so early on that they were deciding to carry you. I thought it was later on. I didn't realize you 3 or 4 days crawling on your hands and your knees with B&Q knee pads and duct tape.
So stupid when you look back, isn't it? It's daft. But this all goes back to this point of doing things and just saying yes is, it's more fun, isn't it?
It is more fun. So when you were crawling effectively for those, sounds like most of the sort of actual journey itself, the sort of climb, was there any point in that where you think I can't continue to this? I'm struggling with this. And what was going through your mind then? So I think, how do I overcome this? How do I keep going?
Yeah, it kind of linked back to my Paralympic training. The good thing was I knew how far I could push myself, having been in high performance gyms or laboratories with, sports scientists who'd pushed me to absolute failure before, so I knew how much I had in the tank. This was different. So I was doing things, just silly things. I didn't want to eat. I felt so sick, but I was forcing food down. I was forcing myself to stay hydrated, etc., because I knew I was going to fail if I didn't. And psychologically, I didn't have any headphones, but I had an iPod speaker that I'd borrowed off someone, and I'd put it behind my head, and I played really down dance music into my ears to take my mind off the fact that actually, my knee pads were full of blood, falling to bits, and I was in so much pain. And I think when you hear other adventurers and people talking about this kind of thing, you can just break it down into stages. You say, okay, I'm going to get up this next path. Then you get there, you take a breath, then you go around the corner and you make it up the next path. That's the only way you can go through, and, an enormous challenge like this. But it was just sheer luck as well that, my knee pads didn't completely fall to pieces. My skin just about held up, the roll of duct tape just about lasted, etc., etc. So it's always a little bit of luck involved as well.
And so how are you with failure then, when things don't happen?
Well, don't really do failure. No, well, I think if you've given it your best go and something goes wrong, then that's the outcome, isn't it? But if you give it your best go and you succeed, then that's great. But just not trying is a travesty. Yeah. I'm not very good at it, to be honest. I'm not very good at failing.
And it's interesting when you talk about you've done training before and sort of almost knew your perhaps capacity, what was in the tank. This was something completely unknown to you, wasn't it? You didn't know what you had in the tank to get up there, whether you were going to get there or not, I guess.
I did 8 months intensive training in a wheelchair. I went and found the biggest hill I could in the New Forest place called Lyndhurst and went up and down this hill. And then
well, that was a waste of time, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a stupid thing. It was. So I learned a lot about how I could push myself. But again, this goes back to resilience, and it's all linked in together. So I now know that if I tried to go up a mountain again, I'd have strategies for doing that. But if I got put into other difficult positions in life, then I'd know how far I could push myself. But that's because I've pushed myself in these positions to know, have these coping strategies in terms of resilience.
Yeah, and I was going to say, what did you learn from all that? Is it that whole sort of pushing your boundary, pushing the limits for yourself? And did you think you pushed yourself to the limits?
I mean, I've done the London Marathon, and that I'm on record somewhere saying Kilimanjaro made doing the London Marathon like doing the washing up. I went to some dark places, and it was the time as well, because on the summit night we set off at midnight and we didn't get to the summit until 10:30 in the morning. I was in absolute bits. It was just that it just went on and on and on and on, and it just felt relentless. So that was the tough bit, being in so much pain, etc. But then the pride and the elation when you get to the top, daft things. My girls had made me a poster that said "Good luck, Daddy." sitting on top of that mountain and holding their poster.
Mm.
And, doing that with my dad as well. My dad made it to the top, collapsed when he got there, nearly killed him. But he made it all the way. Yeah, this is funny. He said he couldn't stop because I was crawling. So he just plodded all the way. And then, yeah, collapsed when he got there. But, things like that and stuff like that happens because you put yourself in these situations, isn't it? And you get the bit at the end where you get to go, bloody hell, I achieved that. I'm pleased.
Yeah, and you did it. That was fantastic. And I guess it obviously wasn't just you had a team around you. How did you manage those relationships, which obviously sounds to me quite fraught at one point? How did that sort of carry on and maintain and develop sort of the mountain?
Yeah, it was. So we were a quite small team. There was me, my dad, Holly, the doctor, Ian from the charity, and we had a cameraman with us. And then we had the guides, which help you, set up the tents. The Sherpas, they're phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, it did get fraught because I think they were worried about us not achieving it more than anything. And I don't know if they thought it was bravado when I turned up and said, I'm going to do this myself. And they all went, oh, yeah, no worries. When it gets tough, he'll get carried. So I think when it got tough and they said, we're going to carry you, and I said, no, I think they all went, oh, this hasn't happened before. So it was fraught, but fraught, I can't speak, did they? But it was good. And I think they got it towards the end. I think they underestimated me.
Yeah, they certainly did. I bet they learned a few things there, didn't they, about people and themselves?
I think it's a crazy British bloke with no legs who crawls up a mountain. I think they thought it was bananas.
Yes, exactly. And I guess just before we finish, really, in terms of people who might be facing a real tough moment in their life right now, whether something physical, mental, or something in their business, what would be your sort of, I guess, one piece of advice that would perhaps help them, inspire them to sort of keep going or somehow navigate that challenge?
Okay, that's kind of massive. I don't know if I can do it with one bit of advice. Could I think I'll answer this like this. I wish I could go back now and speak to that 15-year-old who was going through all the pain. And I know I've just said, oh yeah, take opportunities, it's great. It wasn't, times it was tough. And to be able to say, you know what, mate, it works out right in the end. I think, got a beautiful young family. I play international sport for the country. I've done some amazing other challenges, and I wouldn't change anything now. But when you're in the middle of that moment and it's scary, that's really, really tough. So I guess what I'm saying is just try and keep hope that things will get better, and some of that's in your control. And if it is, then work hard to make it better.
Brilliant. I really appreciate that, Aaron. And thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for all your wonderful energies of overcoming certain crawling up the mountain of Kilimanjaro, winning gold at Tokyo last year. And so if people want to sort of connect with you and get in touch with you, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, on most socials, it's just at Aaron Phipps GBWR. I've got a website, aaronphipps.com as well, if you'd like to hear me speak or the like. So yeah, just get hold of me, please. But more than anything, if anyone's available to come to the Euros in May, come and support us, etc., etc. Cheers.
Brilliant. I appreciate it. Thank you, Aaron.